This story, this blows my mind. So I want to talk about some of the really big things happening between Russia, China, the United States right now, how it relates to cryptocurrencies, how it relates to the future of the dollar. So this story right here is absolutely massive. Cyberbank, this is the biggest bank in Russia. They have about 17,000 branches around the country. They are going to start allowing all of their customers to buy and sell Bitcoin, potentially a few other crypto assets within the next few weeks. Now, that would be like if Bank of America, in fact, Bank of America, or I think it was JP Morgan Chase, the biggest bank in the United States, right? I think they only have about 5,000 branches. So this 3 times as many branches, right? Huge bank. Very big news. And you can have lots of different opinions about the state of modern Russia. I get it. But to see such massive rollout of cryptocurrency services to regular people, right? To regular people to be able to buy and sell cryptocurrencies is a very, very big story. And of course, we're seeing increased adoption of cryptocurrencies in Russia in response to the sanctions regime as a result of what's going on in Ukraine right now and that war going on there, and Russia being cut out of the international financial system. So not only have they allowed companies to start using cryptocurrencies to settle international transactions, they're also now increasing access dramatically for regular people to get cryptocurrencies. So that's pretty damn big. Then over in China, this story, this is crazy. The Bank of China, this is the 4th biggest bank in China. Pretty big deal, right? The Bank of China's BOCI issues tokenized securities on the Ethereum blockchain in Hong Kong. So they issued out about $28 million of securities on the Ethereum blockchain. It's big news. It's big news, guys, because you have to realize this doesn't happen without Beijing's explicit approval. So the Bank of China, one of the biggest banks in the country, got the green light from Beijing to put out $28 million worth of securities on the Ethereum blockchain. And again, they chose Ethereum. They chose Ethereum to do this. They didn't choose some kind of gated private network sort of blockchain-ish sort of thing. They chose Ethereum. They didn't choose Solana, and they didn't choose a layer 2 or any of that stuff. They chose the Ethereum mainnet, the most secure and most used and most adopted layer 1 smart contract platform. And I know the gas fees can be a bit rough, but I'm sure the Bank of China's got the money to cover the smart contract fees. So I'm sure they got it. Oh man, but it's absolutely big news to see this kind of stuff happening in China now. 6 months ago, had you said to me, hey, look, China's going to start the Bank of China, right? Massive state-run bank. If they are going to start launching tokenized securities on the Ethereum blockchain, I'd be like, you're crazy, man. It's happening with Beijing's approval. Again, the turn of the tide that we're seeing right now in China regarding crypto is massive. At the same time, we're seeing this big crackdown in the USA, pushing crypto companies and the future of financial innovation on the internet right into the waiting arms of China and anybody else who's looking to take that business. Ay. What a mistake America's making with their current policies, eh? Also out of China, China considers a broad stimulus package to reignite the economy with property support and rate cuts. Let me translate that for you. They are about to turn on the money printers in China in a massive way. China already has been leading global liquidity. This is an important thing to point out here. China has been leading the global liquidity scene. China will continue to lead the global liquidity scene. Japan is still right there behind China, less, but still behind China, pushing global liquidity. And how long until the US has to join in this big money printing party? All these T-bills that are hitting the market, $1.2 trillion worth, plus all the bank bailout programs, the money printing will happen without a doubt. And this is pretty crazy. And I'm not going to play the video for this. You can go find it if you want, but this is crazy. This is Janet Yellen being asked about the role of the dollar in the world and how we see the dollar dominance already starting to fade. We're seeing different countries reducing their dollar holdings. In particular, she was talking about how China holds about $850 billion, I think, worth of US Treasury bonds, and how they could dump those at any time in a conflict kind of situation and dramatically affect US capital markets and the value of the dollar internationally. But she finally had to admit it. This is, again, the Treasury Secretary of the United States saying that she expects a slow decline of the US dollar as the reserve currency. Now, the rest of this, we're at the end of Empire, Global Dominance, all that stuff. That's from the commentator here on Twitter. But very importantly, the trend of the dollar. I'd have this conversation a lot with people, and people say, well, but the dollar is the king right now. It's always going to be this way, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I say, look at the trends. Look at what is happening. Look at the news stories. We've had more news stories that threaten the status of the dollar in the last 6 months than we've had in the last 60 years. Seriously. And a lot of that revolves around China, the Chinese yuan, the BRICS group, and the growing influence of countries in the quote unquote global south. Here's just a few little stories that we've seen just in the past day. Pakistan has paid its first government-to-government import of Russian oil in Chinese yuan instead of the US dollar. Think about that. Russia and Pakistan, they settled a payment in Chinese yuan. Not the dollar, not the dollar. We're seeing more and more of these stories coming through. What about this one? Breaking news out of Egypt. Egypt has announced it will no longer settle trade with China, India, and Russia in US dollars, instead opting for local currencies. Now, just this one story, you might say, well, it's not that big of a deal. But when you start to see story after story after story, Argentina's doing it, Brazil's doing it, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and on and on and on, we see all these countries opting away from the dollar because the dollar has been weaponized for far too long. And the weight of that is starting to break the international financial system and to break the dollar's status as the global reserve currency. Now, you'll have people who say, well, this is all going to happen overnight. And I don't agree with that. I think this is something that is going to be a slow process. I kind of agree with Janet Yellen on this. It's not going to happen overnight, but we will see the role of the dollar as the global reserve currency fade over time. Maybe it takes 5 years, maybe it takes 10 years, but the direction, unless some major event happens, is definitely going in one way at the moment. And one final chart I want to share with you here. This is percent change in foreign holders of US Treasuries since January 2020. We've seen China, the red line here, massively getting out of the US dollar. And of course, what has China been buying? China's been buying gold. China's been buying gold. And of course, in a situation where we see increased interest in gold from the BRICS community of countries, where we see increased adoption, increased holder rates, stories like Russia letting 17,000 bank branches in the country sell Bitcoin to people. It feels good to have Bitcoin, man. It feels good to have Bitcoin because all this stuff, all this monetary upheaval, in my opinion, is good for Bitcoin.